If you can get an HSA plan and it makes sense to your fiscal situation, the key is you got to fund it. I can't tell you how many people I've come across that had and enrolled in an HSA plan and never funded it.
When you need some advice, never sacrifice, always get it right. Ask the Planman. Finance, insurance, and more.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ask the Planman. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein, and I believe each and every one of us needs to have financial planning in your life. Tax plan, retirement plan, college plan, exit plan, weight loss plan, everything in your life circumvents around having a plan and a strategy. And I believe proactivity is going to be the key to your success. Today, I'm joined with my producer, Allie. Allie, welcome to Ask the Planman. As always, I enjoy bouncing some ideas around with you. Allie, today, what I want to talk about with people is giving them an understanding. We just finished open enrollment season, and the questions of HSA and FSA and HMA and, what are all these acronyms? So what I want to talk about today is why people should be considering, looking at, utilizing FSA, which stands for Flexible Spending Account, or HSA, Health Spending Account, what they are and why these things exist and why or where people would want to take advantage of them. So have you ever heard of those terms, Allie?
I have, and I know that there is a lot of variations all the way down to when you can use them, how you can use them, where you can use them.
Yeah, it definitely lends to some confusion. So over the years, the first programs I remember coming out were the flexible spending accounts. Now, that's usually done through corporations, through businesses, and it's a payroll deduction item. And you would go in and elect how much money you want to put in on a pre-tax basis. And you're funding your flexible spending account, and it's going to be used for things like your deductibles and your co-pays along the year. And so certain over-the-counter medications might be included where you might get a cold medication. If you need NyQuil, you'd swipe your card. Well, NyQuil would be on that approved list, something like that. But the big drawback with the FSA is it's a use it or lose it scenario. And what that means is you've got to forecast the amount of money that you think you're going to use. You got to fund the account. And if you don't use it at the end of the year, the money's gone. Which ultimately is how I wound up getting my braces way back in the day, because I had money left over that I had funded my FSA, and I was taking my son Matthew to the orthodontist, and I had like $2,500 left over. And I said, well, how much is it to do my teeth? Because I never had braces as a kid. And he's like, well, we can get you started and put you in, and then you can pay the balance next year. So I'm like, beautiful. Here, use the $2,500. And I got started. I mean, it cost me $5,000 for braces, but hey, I was going to throw the money away. So FSA, flexible spending account, big drawback, use it or lose it. And then as time progressed, we came out with health spending accounts. Now, they're a little bit different of an animal, and you have to have the type of plan that qualifies. So not every plan through your job, your employer, is going to be HSA eligible. But we've seen HSA plans come available on the marketplace. We see HSA plans become available in private health insurance. And so what those usually entail is more of a higher deductible plan, first and foremost. So you wouldn't have a $500 deductible. You probably wouldn't have a $1,000 deductible. You might have something more like $3,000 to $5,000 or above as your deductible. And anything copay wise and deductible wise is going to funnel through your HSA first. And then you would eventually maybe hit your deductible, and then the insurance would start to kick in. Now, the big mistake I find is people sign up for these high deductible plans, HSA eligible. Premiums are usually a little bit less, right? Because you're buying a higher deductible plan, the premiums are normally going to be less. And they don't fund the HSA. And there's a big disconnect. So health spending account allows the individual to put money away on a tax deductible basis into a savings/investment account. And it is not a use it or lose it component. It's something that can accumulate wealth over time, i.e., it acts and behaves a lot like a Roth IRA, except contributions to a Roth IRA are not tax deductible. Contributions to an HSA are tax deductible. So if you're allowed to put in around $3,700, $3,800 a year per person, you're going to take that as a tax deduction. Now, why is this important to understand? Well, medical expenses are not necessarily a tax deductible item. If you had $1,000 deductible and you had to go, I had an allergic reaction to something. I had to go to the ER and, it was like $15,000 of bills, but my portion, my deductible, whatever it was, I had to pay like $800. Well, that $800, I can't deduct that. It's not a tax deductible item. Why? Because there's a medical threshold of 7.5% of everyone's adjusted gross income. So somebody who makes $100,000 adjusted gross income has to absorb $7,500 before the medical expenses are deductible. Now, anything above $7,500 would be deductible, but that $7,500 in this case falls into the donut hole, black hole, no deduction. So by funding your HSA and your FSA, but funding your HSA, you're getting the tax deduction for that $3,700. And then as you're using the expenses throughout the year for co-pays and your deductibles, you're paying in pre-tax dollars. And as we've talked about numerous times on the show, there's a big difference of paying in pre-tax versus post-tax and utilizing tax efficiencies, right? Like borrowing money from life insurance and other things of that nature. Like there's tax efficiencies here. So the HSA is going to allow you to pay in pre-tax dollars for your expenses throughout the year. It's going to allow the money to stay in the plan and continue to earn interest if you're just in the savings account. But years back, I had one. It was through Bank of America, and I invested in mutual funds. I'm market savvy. I put in the S&P 500 and some other indexes. And if the market went up 10%, my balance made 10%. Now, of course, if the market went down 10%, I would lose 10%, right? But the point is that if I'm funding this thing for 10 or 20 years and not sickly and not ripping through the money, I'm building up a bank account, an investment vehicle with tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that now then when I'm older in my 60s, 70s, 80s, I can pull that money out for any and all medical expenses, and it's all tax-free money. So if I fund 50 grand and it becomes 300 grand because it invested for all that time, I have $300,000 of tax-free money to use towards medical expenses, i.e. assisted living, nursing homes, rehab centers. I got a client in Pennsylvania called me the other day. Her mother fell, broke her leg or hip, whatever. She can't walk. She's in the hospital, needs surgery, and then rehab. And she couldn't go home. She can't walk. She can't stand on her own. She can't get around. And she's on Medicare. Well, she has Medicare Advantage. I'll go back and listen to our episodes, difference of Medicare Advantage versus Medicare supplements. But Medicare Advantage now, she's got bills. And so she's got a $200 a day copay for her rehab stay. She went through the first 20 days that were covered. Now she's past that 20 days and her Medicare Advantage plan doesn't cover it anymore at 100%. She has a $200, let's call it a copay. And I'm just rounding the numbers. Okay. Now she had an HSA plan. She could be swiping that card and paying the $200 out of that account. That's why it was there. So I think this is more important for people to utilize and understand, especially, the younger listener out there, somebody in their, obviously 20s, but, 30s, 40s, if you could start funding an HSA, you're healthy, you're not using the money, you just think of it as another savings vehicle tax-free growth. You could put it in the index, indexes. And I don't know how diverse you can, I don't think you could pick individual stocks in these things, but I haven't done one in years. But, if nothing else, the S&P 500 has a historical 10+% rate of return. So, every 7 years, Allie, your money can double. You put in if you and Glenn put in $7,000 this year and never touch it, in 7 years, it's going to double at 10% rate of return, right? So 7 becomes 14, 14 becomes 28, 28 becomes 56. And do that 10 years in a row, and you got $500,000 at some point, right? So, there's a lot of money there. So again, I don't know what companies and why somebody picks an FSA over an HSA. I can't say, but if you're being offered an FSA and you can't get an HSA, obviously you want to take a look and utilize that, for the grand or two that would make sense to your deductible and copays. But if you can get an HSA plan and it makes sense to your fiscal situation, the key is you got to fund it. I can't tell you how many people I've come across that had and enrolled in an HSA plan and never funded it. I'm like, well, why didn't you put money in it? And they didn't know how, they didn't know where. Again, it depends. I don't know where they got the structure from, but the whole key was because now they go to the hospital and they're getting bills for $4,000 and they're paying in after-tax dollars. And if they put the $4,000 in the HSA, at least they got the tax deduction. I'm like, what are you doing? I think this happened to my friend Frank. I'm like, Frank, what are you doing? Like, you got to put money in the HSA. Like, you have a plan, you got to fund it. So, again, a lot of times it's payroll deduction, or you can open it up yourself and just write a check and fund it once. You can do it, in a number of different ways. So check your local banks. Check with again, I mentioned Bank of America. Not that I'm telling you to use Bank of America, but that's who I used years ago. It was a smaller swimming pool of players. This is over 15 years ago. So, in today's world, I don't know what institutions are in it. Worst case, Allie, you get a bank account. You just get a savings account, maybe paying 3, 4, 5% interest these days. So again, still something, I don't know if you could buy a CD. You need it liquid. If you got to swipe your card, you want to make sure, but you might leave $500 to $1,000 liquid in the cash or the money market, and then take the majority of the balance and put it into some mutual funds. And if you start tapping into the cash, then you move some money back over. And again, it's part of your overall game plan. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's we often refer to it as our secret weapon when it comes to retirement, because it's such a fantastic, it's almost kind of shocking how good it is when you really look at it.
Yeah, so as a layperson, so you have experience in it, but any questions? Like if you were my listener, like what questions might have popped up as I was sharing some of this? So there's one more component I'll throw out when you're done. Go ahead.
Perfect. Number one is, and you probably already addressed it, but worthwhile to spend a little bit more time on it. Can you have them both at the same time? Or if you have one, and then let's say you have an HSA and you're no longer on a high deductible plan, and you move over to another plan where an HSA account is not available, but FSA is available, what do you do?
I would say, regardless of, I don't know how you'd be offered both. I would think that wouldn't necessarily happen unless it was like maybe mid-year, you change jobs and the plan, one plan offered you one and then the other plan came over and offered you another one. Again, if I have a choice, I'm going HSA. Now, if you lose the HSA feature by changing your plan the next year, then you're not eligible. Like, you can't fund the HSA unless you have the plan that goes with it. So again, we don't have a ton of people on the marketplace that are doing it, but the marketplace does offer these HSA plans. They're like usually bronze level plans, and has the high deductibles as the bronze plan tend to have. But most people, I'm trying not to generalize, but most people who are doing the marketplace plans are probably not always going to be in a position to fund. Like, the marketplace. The majority of the work we do on the marketplace is people with pre-existing conditions. They have no other choice. And then, maybe people with income that's low enough to get subsidies. So if I'm getting a subsidized plan and I'm paying 30, 40 bucks a month for my $800 of health insurance, I probably don't have the money to fund an HSA for $3,000, $4,000. So, it is a little bit of a disconnect. Now, somebody with a higher income stream, not getting a subsidy, has a pre-existing condition and wants to opt into the HSA, then that would make a lot of sense for them. But we just did a few plans on the private side. We have a multitude of private options, and they just started offering HSA eligible plans. So all of a sudden, I got a couple of kids that are 25, 30, 35 years of age. And I'm like, you know what? I can put you in this HSA plan. Like, do you understand how that works? And one kid was all over it. He actually asked. And then I showed it to a couple other people. So it became a good jump here. So what do you got? So 2024 maximum contribution is $4,150 for an individual. Double it to $8,300. FSA is $3,200. So you got a little bit more on your HSA. And then was there anything on a catch up for over 50?
I didn't see anything on the catch up immediately when I searched, but
I feel like there is, but maybe not.
I'm still poking around for us.
No, that's fine. So she threw it in my chat, everybody. So thank you, Allie. So $4,150, $8,300 for a couple. So again, if you think about that, that's about $700 a month, a little bit less, that you could fund and put away pre-tax and have another investment vehicle. And then, if you really want to get crazy, like you can look into self-directing, you could pick up real estate and other, like I don't get too deep into the self-directing world, but there's a whole movement in that regard. So you get away from the bank and you get away from the mutual funds and the stock market. But you put 30, 40, 50 grand away, Allie, and you go hire a self-directed location, which is usually another financial institution of some kind. They're your custodian or trustee, and then they'll manage the flow of your money. And you could buy rental properties. Like you could buy a piece of real estate and get rental income, and the rental income comes back into your HSA, and it's tax-free income. And that money is applied towards the growth of your account and your assets. So, again, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. Hey, guess what? The plan man knows what he knows. HSA over 55 years of age. So not 50, 55. Okay. I'm 60, so I can still do it. $1,000 extra per year. So over 50, over 55, not 50. The IRA catch-ups are 50 and above, I think. So HSA, so now a 55-year-old couple can move into a community for 55 and olders, and they can fund $10,300 in their HSA. So, all right. So the third component here, I was hoping to keep this a lot shorter. So there's a private program that we have for people who don't have FSA and don't have HSA eligibility. Is we have something in the private sector called HMA, health matching accounts. And the basics of the program is it's a 3-year accumulation. We have one for ourselves, and they actually have it for pets. We have a PHMA for pets. And so all the vet bills funnel through our PHMA, and it's not pre-tax, but it's a match. So I put the money in on after-tax basis, and there's a calculation in there. And ideally, you don't want to touch the money for the 3 years to get it fully funded. But, if I'm putting in $10,000 at the end of the 3 years, it'll have like $15,000, like something like that. So you're going to get like $1 for every 2, something along those lines. And there's different levels and different amounts. And you could use it for anything medically cleared, similar to the FSA or the HSA. You swipe the card, it's going to work at those locations. So again, we've been offering that to clients. We have it. I don't have an HSA plan. I don't have an FSA plan. We have a basic, deductible type plan. And so we decided to start funding the HMA, and knock wood, I don't have too many reasons to tap into it. But at the end of the 3 years, we're going to have like, $15,000 for our Actually, the math is more than that, I think. So I'm putting in 200 a month, 2 times 12, 24. I think I'm going to put around 7,500 in, and it becomes 15. If I think I'm right. So, and then for the pets, we put in about 100 a month, and 112, 36, and I think it grows to like 7,500. So,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
there's fees, there's monthly fees that come out, and there's the temptation and desire is you want to tap it early, but you really don't want to tap it for the first year because of the fees that are associated and getting it, boiling and built up, and then getting the money in there. And then once you cap, you're done with your installments. And then when you go to use it and you start to drain it, then you start to refurbish it. Right. And then the match gets even higher at that point because now you're going to accelerate even faster to get back to the cap. So if my plan's a 15,000 plan, the goal is to always have $15,000 available. Once it hits its max, if I tap into it for 7,500, then my $200 a month payment starts kicking back on, and then they're going to match it even faster to get me back to the 7,500. So there are 3 options out here. You got FSA, usually available through your employer's company plans. HSA, we touched on, health spending account. That could be on the marketplace. That could be in private health insurance, certainly group plans, corporately. FSA, as we said, Allie, is use it or lose it. Allie was kind enough, so it's $3,250. No, $3,200 for your FSA is your annual max, but you get more on the HSA, $4,150 per person, $8,300 for a couple. And then if you've been blessed to make it to 55 and above, you get an extra $1,000 a piece. So you can take that over 10,000. Highlights of the HSA is what? It's not use it or lose it. It's pre-tax money. It comes out tax-free. You get to invest it. You could put it in something as simple as cash. You could put it into mutual funds if you decide to get creative and self-direct. You could maybe even buy gold bars and real estate and Bitcoins. I don't know, whatever your druthers are, but you could explore those options. I don't do that kind of work, but I'm here to let you know they exist, and you can go explore those types of things. So HSA is a longer term plan. It's a savings plan. We liken it to the similarities of a Roth IRA, right? Because a Roth IRA does what? Grows tax-free, comes out tax-free, but doesn't go in tax deductible. All right, well, if that's it for today, Allie, we're going to bring it to a close. Folks, please like, share, subscribe this episode. Hit me up at 844-PLANMAN. Come to planman.tv. Hit me up with your questions. Bruce at Ask the Planman. Like, share, subscribe. As always, if you need some advice, always get it right. Come Ask the Planman. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein. Until next time, thanks for joining us, Allie. We'll see you again.
When you need some advice, never sacrifice, always get it right. Ask the Planman. Finance, insurance, and more.